Okay, let's take a look at a super awesome light mod. I talked about last week these stringy LEDs. They run off of 3 AA batteries. They're really thin. They're like on 18 gauge wire. They're miniature LEDs encapsulated in a bubble of like polymer. And if they color the polymer, you can see the red lights behind me. You know, they'll be whatever color you want. Anyway, what I did is I took a regular filter. This is regular plastic filter for a lens that I mounted this in. I just covered it with tape and actually circled these LEDs in here in the center. Let me drop in my 3 batteries there, 3 AA batteries. What you could actually do is hide this along someone's arm. You could use this for all sorts of stuff. And I'm going to tell you a couple things just to scratch the surface with. You could use this as a single lighting tool. You could also use it with a grid. One actually a really neat thing that I've actually seen some videographers do, and I actually wanted to create one of these, is have a female model hold it like they're holding a pocket mirror and use this as the single point of illumination. You used to use high ISO for this, but actually use this as the single point of illumination. I could actually also use this with a grid. All I have to do is just put some temporary tape on the back of this. This is a 15-degree grid. So you actually have a high degree of directionality for a specific macro lighting, for example. The illumination basically doesn't show at all unless you get within that 15-degree range of illumination. Excellent. These little string lights are like 60 LEDs along a 10-foot span. I have actually a few of the LEDs covered up here. What you can do is you can actually tape this to the back of a model's arm, actually have them hold this and use this as the primary light source. Or, another reason, I've created other mods like this but not using these little micro LEDs like this together, is you could use this as a painting tool along the body. You could use it as a painting tool for all sorts of stuff. I've actually thought of actually using gels over top of this to actually change the color. All I have to do is just switch a gel, which will take a couple seconds. What this is a plastic filter, and inside of that is covering it is a glass, it's just slightly scratched up glass filter for a lens to cover it up. And what I can also do is actually set this here, put a piece of translucent paper underneath it, stick some macro objects underneath it. I can't even begin to tell you all the ways that I could actually use this little sucker. When I actually found these micro LEDs, the ideas started spawning in my head. I've got at least 20 ideas in my head of actually how I want to use this. Like I said, all I have to do is cover it with a gel to change the color of the illumination too. I want to actually stick a blue gel over this and actually use this for a portraiture, a very unique portraiture, something that I won't mention, but you know, use your imagination for God's sakes. Just stop thinking through your lens and your camera. You actually have to think about light. I mean, a professional photographer is someone that does it for the living, to make a living or a significant part of the living, but that doesn't mean they're an expert photographer. There's a difference between an amateur versus a professional. A professional is just a working schmuck. You know, he might have 10 tricks up his sleeve, and that's what he or she does to make a living, but that doesn't mean... We're not talking amateur versus professional photographer. Well, oh, you're a professional photographer. And I'm going like, well, who gives a shit? Professional photographer doesn't mean anything. Recently, somebody else on YouTube made a video about that. They were talking about amateur versus professional photographer. And what I'm telling you is none of that matters for shit. We're going to talk about novice versus expert here. When it comes to an expert photographer, we're talking about somebody that's master of the lighting, you know. As my motto goes, make light your bitch. I know that sounds kind of sexist, right? But it's kind of funny, too, at the same time. Makes you remember things. Far, far more important than an awesome camera and lens, not that that isn't important, is be able to have imagination and control over your lighting. The stuff, I've thought of so many things I can actually do with this, and actually another mod that I'm going to create that I haven't made it yet. This is only $10. This is just a random filter I found in my closet and a random old plastic lens hood, and it took me about 10 minutes to make this, for God's sakes. You can find these on eBay. They're called micro LEDs. It runs off 3 AA batteries. You stick a piece of Velcro on this or a hook and hang it off the back of someone's shirt. Run the feed line down the back of someone's hand or arm where it actually can't be shown in the photograph, and just have them holding this as a primary source of illumination. Make sure obviously it's pointed in the correct direction, or use this with the association with the grid so you get a high degree of directionality. I can think of so many things to do with this. Yeah, I got pissed off when I saw that video recently. You're talking about amateur versus professional photographer. And to me, I mean, the first thing that went through my mind is, who gives a shit? Why don't we talk about novice versus expert photographer? Because there is a huge difference between a professional photographer and an expert photographer. Huge difference, Someone's like, that guy's a professional photographer. And I'm like, well, so what? Who gives a crap? That just means that, like maybe takes headshots of babies or something. It doesn't mean he knows anything about lighting. He was taught how to set up his lights. It's like, this is how you do to take headshots. And that person may only do, 5 or 6 tricks in their bag. It's like, well, he's a working professional photographer. Well, so what? That doesn't mean he knows anything about lenses or lighting or where to place light, or he has an imagination, able to think outside of the box. I mean, to professional photographer, ultimately, denotatively, even connotatively, doesn't really mean shit. Now, if someone says, that guy's an expert photographer, then I'm like, oh, yeah. Well, nobody talks like that. Well, yeah, we use the word professional. That just means you're a working schmuck, Professional car mechanic doesn't know anything about driving. He may not know anything other than how to fix Volvos. That guy is a professional car mechanic. Well, so what? Doesn't mean he knows how to drive a damn car. Same thing applies in photography. Anyway, check these out. They're called micro LEDs, and like I said, let your mind wander. I let my mind wander, and just a half an hour of mind wandering, I've thought of 30 different things I could actually do with this. I mean, let your mind wander, Use that squishy tool that exists between your ears. It is far, far, far more important than your camera or your lens that you have, okay? Thanks for watching. I still need to recover from this vacation. It's absolutely murdered me. And you always need a vacation from your vacation, as they say. Thanks. Bye.